get enough in there so you can see if you get the message across. You can see this is sort of part of your observation. Here's your orientation, here's your decision, and here's all this action. Think of it that way. Moving it. I see that taking place. I think most of you people are familiar with Schwerpunkt right here. This is my editorial intention. I laid it on the crowd. We don't have that. I said, well, then. When you're not in the Schwerpunkt, what do you call it? And they couldn't answer that. I said, I'm going to call it a name. Using their own language. In fact, Hasselmann really liked that. So that's pretty good. He's the German attaché. And what the reason I want to do is I want to bring in an idea. You want to play that chain chi beat. The Nebenpunkt in a sense is the chain, the Schwerpunkt is the chi. And so you really want to set that up. Yo Sun Tzu had a good idea. But that's a little bit of my own editorial invention. And then these special teams they sent. They had, the Germans initially had what they call the Brandenburg Regiment. Anybody hear about that, the Brandenburg Regiment? And then later on, Skorzeny and his boys. And their games that do this kind of stuff, so the guys are all confused, soften up what you're trying to achieve. Very successful. And then your firepower, and of course, just cascading it on, just pouring it on. But all the time, strength against weakness, strength against weakness. At all those levels of work. And of course, the idea is very simple. The idea is very simple. Very simple idea. Okay? Now, here's the impression I'm trying to leave you with. If you look at that, here's the impression. Look what happened. If you think about that, what are they doing? It generates many non-cooperative centers of gravity because all these thrusts are going in there and they're dividing, not only physical, but mental and moral. They're working on that organism at all levels. And so what does that do then? Well, it undermines, not only that, it undermines and seizes those important things the adversary depends upon. Remember we talked about those vulnerabilities? Colonel? Remember we talked about those? You go through those weaknesses, now you can undermine and seize those things that you really depend upon, those critical vulnerabilities, as you're working your way through a system. But you had to expose them before you could do that. Expose that vulnerability. Go ahead.
I can see where you get your non-cooperative centers of gravity from the guerrillas. What inform me as how you get with the Blitzkrieg? I missed that.
Well, I sort of haven't. I cheated a little bit. Not too much. I got to go back to the Gooderian. Hang on, I got this. Multiple thrusts. Remember I said multiple thrusts? Gooderian's multiple thrusts? I'll go into it in more detail later on, but I had it in that one chart. I didn't say it here.
Basically, you're talking about the tactical centers of gravity device.
Yeah, but they do it at all levels. They do it tactical, grand tactical. I'm going to show you that later on.
What I'm saying is they're not tying into the social fiber like the guerrillas.
But they're not getting into the social fiber like the guerrillas do. That's correct. Remember they're not getting into that in the moral dimension like the guerrillas are. We'll get into that later on. I can't put it all in one chart. You got to let me sequence it a little bit. But you're going to see I'm going to bring it in. You have a good question, just hang on to it. But you're right. The point is they're not getting at that moral fiber like the guerrillas do. That's correct. There's a difference, and we're going to bring that out. I just can't do it all in one chart. I've got to bring out the first thing first. Okay. But it raises a nagging question. How do they simultaneously sustain rapid pace and abruptly adapt to changing circumstances? In other words, if you're trying to go fast forward, if you adapt, it's hard to go fast forward. If you go fast forward, it's hard to adapt. So in other words, they look like two things that don't go together very well. Not only that, if you try to exercise two commands from the top, it becomes rigid, yet you let the guys do their thing, then you can't hold the whole thing together. Two more opposing tendencies. Christ, you let them do what they want, the whole goddamn thing's going to fly apart, the operation. On the other hand, if we impose too much control from the top, then you're slow as molasses in January. So you have opposing tendencies here. So the question is, how do you resolve these opposing tendencies? Here's one: rapid pace versus local adaptation. If you get them adapting locally, they're not going rapid pace into the rear. And the other thing is, you oppose too much top-down command and control. You may have good control, but now you have a rigid thing and can't put it down. On the other hand, if you give them freedom, the whole thing flies apart and you're not realizing your purpose. I mean, it's there. So you say, God, we got to resolve that. If we can't resolve that, we got a big problem here. So let's look into that. So looking into that, here's a key point. Each level, from simple to complex, platoon all the way up to theater, they all have their OODA loop or their OODA cycle. But remember, the ones at the higher level are going to take much longer to go through. The ones at lower level are working their way through those OODA loops a little bit quicker. So the higher up you go and you bring in more and more information in longer time in order to find out what the lower level is doing so you can make your decision, all you're doing is you're stretching out that OODA loop. I mean, it's just natural. You can't avoid it. Okay, so it brings in the idea. This point here. How, in a sense, can you get the slower rhythm with the larger pattern operating with the faster rhythm with the lower pattern? Each one sort of has a certain rhythm or pace they're operating at. They're different, but how can we harmonize it? So, first point, great question. How do Blitz harmonize these differing tempos and rhythms? Okay. So here's my initial response. Now, this is just an initial blush. We're going to work our way through it so you can understand it. First of all, you got to give lower level commanders wide freedom within, that's the key word, with an overall mind, time, space scheme. In other words, everybody sort of has the same conceptual scheme. They have the same kind of a conceptual scheme through which they're working through. And I don't care whether you're a squad or whether you're a commanding general of the theater. You're all working within the same scheme. Because if you got one and got to get the other, it's going to get very goddamn confused. Then you got to issue detailed orders, everything stretches out. But there's a danger, which we'll get into later on. So that's one point. Second thing, you have to have shaping agents in order to implement that scheme. And the two that the Germans use here, I'll go into more, is their mission concept, sometimes called their Auftrag tactic or Auftrag concept, and also the other one that's called the Schwerpunkt. Shaping agents. Now we're still only getting a blush at it. I want to go into it deeper. This is just the first chart of this. I'm going to give you a feeling for this. We talked about this last night. Okay? So now let's go after it. After having taken that first blush. So it raises a question here. Or questions, actually, too. What does the overall mind time scheme imply or presuppose? And likewise, how do these concepts, the mission and Schwerpunkt concept, fit into it? And we'll take both those on. First, question first. Mind time space. Look at that. And I'm quoting General von Rundstedt. Blumenthal. I didn't say the wrong name. And note what he said. According to him, it presupposes a common outlook based upon, and I'm quoting him directly here, and incidentally, those are his underlines. Body of professional officers. The same training during long years of teaching, same type of education, same way of thinking, etc. And the second thing, furthermore, officers' training allows the board a very great measure of freedom of action and freedom in the manner of executing order. Now, when he talks about a body of professional officers, who's he really talking about there? It's a euphemism for what? General staff officer. That's what he's talking about. General. He gave it the other officers too, but that's what he's talking about.
Is there any other than historical facts? Is there any significance to that?
Well, there's a very big significance. I'm going to make a significance.
Well, to the fact that it was only, in their case, only the general staff.
No, it wasn't only the general staff. He's just making that point. I mean, they were sort of the cadre that also gave the other guys the same thing. Because other guys were not general staff officers got this training too. But when he's using that body of, he's one of the aristocracy of the German army. Okay, so now let's look at that. Let's examine it. Let's assume that we didn't do that. We didn't give a guy go through all this. And therefore, you said, okay, let him run on the yellow. Price that thing won't hold together. You got to get him detailed orders if you don't do that. So the only way you can give a guy a freedom of action is when you have a common scheme. If you give him freedom of action without a common scheme, the whole thing flies apart. It's when you have this common scheme, you can give these lower level people the freedom of action because they have the overall scheme. They're thinking like the other people, and they can use their own initiatives in that. And that's my point. Without a common outlook, superiors cannot give subordinates freedom of action and maintain coherence of ongoing operation. That's the key idea. They can give them the freedom of action, but they don't have the common scheme. The whole operation will fly apart. You can't maintain a coherent operation. In other words, in a sense, what am I saying here? Anybody? What I'm really trying to say is you not only want to have individual Fingerspitzengefühl, in a sense you want to have organizational Fingerspitzengefühl. You all remember the word I used last night, right? That's what we're talking about here. That intuitive feel. They all got it, among one another, too. Now, I get into it deeper when I get into my organic design for command and control, and some of you people have heard that, how you do that. That's a very important idea. Therefore, the implication is very clear. A common outlook was possessed by a body of officers that represents a unifying thing that can use to simultaneously encourage subordinate initiative, yet still be inside superior intent. Think about it. Just run through the logic. If you do not have that common theme, how can you give freedom of action? If you do, the whole operation is going to fly apart. You're not going to maintain a coherent operation. And so you say, well, I'm not going to give them that. So fine, then you're going to have detailed orders. Now you've got to slow his molasses operation. It's going to take forever, and you're not going to realize your purpose either. So in that sense, and I've never said this before, it just occurred to me right now, I'm thinking about it, we use the word. In that sense, how do you exercise control? This is very important. How are you, think about this, when you like to use the word control, knowing that how are we really, or how are these people really exercising control? Say it again, you said it.
Self-discipline to the common...
The control is through the common theme. In other words, they all have the same mindset. In other words, they work in the same way, That's the discipline that works through that. That's the control mechanism. The common outlook. The common outlook is the control mechanism. Not the individual guy, whether he goes down this road or does this zigzag or whatever he does out there.
How do you explain the German ability, say, in the last months, say the last 10 months of World War II, to maintain this common goal and common outlet, even though they had very little time to train junior officers in their NCO Corps?
You should read, there's a good, incidentally, there's a good book out on it today. Have you ever read Van Creveld's Fighting Power? He goes into that. Even when it was down toward the end of the war, they still trained those guys real well because they recognized that was important. They curtailed some of it, but they didn't stop that. Behind the lines, getting the guys ready so they go in combat instead of just feed them in there like cannon fodder. Of course, probably very near the end they had because of the SS and the commanding. So under very trying circumstances, they still cause us a lot of problems. A good book on that is, in fact, I think it's Van Creveld's best book is that one, Fighting Power, where he gets into that. Remember, instead of putting in individual replacements, how did they put them in? Goddamn right. Why did they put them in by unit? They wanted those moral bonds, so when they do things, they can act. They have that unit Fingerspitzengefühl. That's what they were really doing, whether they said it or not. That organic harmony. We don't like to do that. Oh, Christ, it causes all problems with personnel. Well, screw personnel. They're supposed to serve the combat forces. The combat forces don't serve personnel. Yet we let it go the other way. See, American, well, fuck them, those guys out there, they'll get along. We're going to send them who we want, when we want, and it'll be individual, and shut your mouth. It's inconvenient for the personnel troops. After all, you're a dummy anyway. Otherwise, why in the hell did you get in the infantry? All you're going to do is lose your life. I mean, that's why some people think. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't take that personally. I understand where the argument is. Of course, they think I'm a dummy because I was a fighter pilot. They say, what are you asshole up there screwing around for?
I think we're all grasping it, but I want to see if these things are co-equal or how they all fit together. The communications we have comes from three things. One is this common body of knowledge.
And in a sense, that common body of knowledge, that is your control mechanism. That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's a very important
one. Are there two more, i.e.
Keep going.
Intent, self-discipline?
Oh yeah, you want to inculcate that self-discipline. That's correct.
But how do those three things and look at equally, or?
Oh, well, I didn't hear the use. I only heard two. Common outlook and self-discipline. What was the other one?
Intent.
Intent. Well, the point is, if you treat, in a sense, they're all together. If you train them in a common outlook, part of that common outlook is the commander's intent. I'll get to that in just a minute. And the self-discipline. It all plays together. It's part of the organic harmony. That's part of the overall common outlook. That's right.
Implicit communication.
Yeah, it's all part of the common outlook. But now, you know, you still, even though we say, oh, we all got a common outlook, we still got to execute the thing. You can't say just do it, because it may still come apart. And so you need what I call the word shaping agent. We're getting to deeper. We haven't gone into that yet. All we're talking about is overall mind time space. So let's get into that now. Knowing that, it raises a question. And this is, but you know, how do the German concept of mission and Schwerpunkt fit in? In other words, how do they shape this whole thing? So let's get into it first.
Does German Army Corps the same concept as that?
Mike may know that better. I'm not too sure.
Well, what's the question?
That's a good question. I don't know that
Does the
answer.
German Army today have the same concept that we're talking about?
I think some of them
They're
do.
trying to get it back. There's been kind of a controversy in the Bundeswehr, very much like the same one we've had here. And I would say they're closer to this than they were 5 years ago.
They're trying to get it
They're
back.
having a very similar debate to what we've had.
They lost
And they lost a lot of it.
Yeah, we won World War
After
II,
the
so they
war.
want to do it our way. You know that.
That's right, and now they're gaining it back. So you know, I'd be reluctant to comment and say yes, it's exactly like. In fact, no, they don't have this whole thing thought out as Colonel Boyd's thought it out by any means. And they're somewhere in between us and the old World War II German Army in a word. There's a big subject.
In fact,
It's
on
a good
Lucer, about my
question,
breeding,
very big
that's
one.
great. I wish I would have given it.
Some things you do notice. Well, let me tell you one thing I have noticed. Talking to German officers and getting other, just I'm interested in this. One thing that they have not done, it appears to me, to the extent we have, is put this extreme emphasis on rank and seniority that we have. That is, their juniors seem to be much more willing to enter into debates with their seniors, and their seniors don't think it's strange. Now, you know, we do it, but you watch the human dynamics, and we put an inordinate amount of importance on rank and seniority. And that's one thing I don't notice that they've done. But that's, as I say, I don't want to get off on it. It's a good question that deserves a long answer and probably some trips over there. But
Yeah, and I haven't talked to Von Lucer. I know that they were trying to get it back, and I just didn't know where they were. But I hadn't talked to Von Lucer for a few years because he was back in Germany, and then of course I had some problems last year, so I didn't get to get with him. So that's why I said, "Well, let Mike answer the question." I just don't know right.
But, you know, the general staff, for instance, they had to go underground again. I mean, the general staff was a
They
very
sort of have it now, but
your Einheit and all that.
That's right. Okay, now the message then behind it. We talk about here's the German concept of mission. No, you kind of think of it as a contract between a superior and subordinate, an agreement. Whereas in a sense, the superior determines what is going to happen, but the subordinate determines how it's going to be accomplished, as long as it's within the superior intent. In other words, doesn't tell him how to do it. As a matter of fact, let me give you a good example. Some of you people have heard of General Balk, haven't you? Herman Balk, very successful Panzer commander. We had him over here, I think, I can't remember, 1981 or something like that. We had him in Pentagon. And we had him in the assistant secretary. We went through a long discussion. We had lunch in one of the nice dining rooms up there with one of the assistant secretaries. And one of the guys said, but how do you tell him to do stuff? And Balk was insulted. I don't tell anybody how to do anything. Because all we tell them is what has to be done to get an agreement upon it. They determine how it's going to be carried out. He's, what if you don't like the way it doesn't make any difference whether I like it or not. He doesn't. I stand aside. The only thing I worry about is if I think it's illogical, I won't let him do it. It won't work. But normally they know how. It might be different from one, but it'll work. He does it that way. He determines how it's going to be done. I just determine what's going to be done. Because what if it doesn't work out? Well, if they do it a couple times, it doesn't work out, we're going to replace him with somebody else. But normally when they pick those guys, they've observed them for a period of time.
You know, another thing.
And then he gave a good example. He talked about this one guy he had who was an Austrian. I think it was an Austrian. Might not have been an Austrian. But no, it was a German. And during the pre-war exercises and all that, the guy was a basket case. He was terrible. Couldn't do a goddamn thing right as a commander. And so they kept him in the training thing all the time. He still was, when he put him in exercise, he couldn't do it. So eventually they needed him because they ran out of commanders. They said, well, we got to throw him and put him in a sort of a secular front. And he's doing pretty good. They put another thing, they put him in the wildest thing. The guy's doing better than any other commander. So he said, now we're going to send him back and show him how we're going him to teach his methods to the guys in the back. Once again, he's a basket case. And I've seen the same thing among fighter pilots. I've seen when I was out in L. Some guys, Christ, they didn't know how to spell their name and how to tell anybody to do anything. But they're fantastic. There's an innate skill there. They have it. And they can get people's esprit up, putting peacetime or basketballs. And you see it. We talked about this one guy. He said, and every time they couldn't believe it. They figured, well, now he's finally got the picture. Now he's going to show our young people how to do it right. He said, oh my God, he was a total disaster. Back to the front and did subversion. But that's the kind of things you find out. You get those surprises. And I'm sure in your career, you've seen that, you people, different times.
You know, there's one other dimension, that question you asked that I think this needs to be brought out about the German Army in World War II, the incredible setting the German Army now. And Marines can relate this, because in World War II, you talk to any German soldier who was in that army, and their esprit was just incredible.
Even in the worst days.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the right down to some of the things that we call discipline, you know, the pride in being a soldier. And that has a lot to do with it. And I think that's kind of what may have started some of this dialogue 10 years ago. I had so many German officers say to me, you Marines ought to pick up on this, because you have a lot of what we had back in the days of the 100,000-man army before World War II. Don't forget that since World War II, a lot of that has just come apart because of the pacifism, the attitude, the understandable attitude of post-war Germany. So the click of the heels and a lot of those things that made all these other things come together, the esprit and the camaraderie, some of that's gone. And so it's a different thing. Yet on the other side of the coin, the German culture has placed a tremendous emphasis on education. You know, John and I were talking about that the other day. Yeah. And I would say more so than Americans do. And that gives them a different outlook. And that probably keeps them a little strong. You know, they're weakened because they lost some of the old military spirit. I mean, that's gone. And they're going to have a tough time ever getting that back. But they're strengthened because they still put an awful lot of emphasis on education, more so than our society does.
But note this, note that second bullet. This is the thing Mike was alluding to before. In other words, he expected the subordinate to really throw his weight in there before the decision was made. He's given the right to challenge or question the feasibility of this, and he feels superior ideas on what can be achieved or not in accordance with the existing situation, etc., etc. He feels he's not given adequate resources. He can challenge them. Expect it. We raise this to Balk. Well, a lot of superiors don't like it, but you know, they got to do it. Some of them would not go along with the spirit of it. He said it was bad. You really got to go along with it. So be sure you bring in those ideas before you make that decision. Once the decision is in place, though, then they got to carry out the decision. So if they give this place, then likewise, of course, when you play that game, the superior has every right to expect the subordinate to stay within that intent to carry out the decision, because he's been given that opportunity. In other words, there's sort of a contractual agreement there, is what I'm trying to tell you. There's a two-way sway, not just a one-way sway. Think about it. The limitation, well, you know, this is an important idea. I say, well, it gives form and expression what it's expected. What it really doesn't do, it says, how do you coordinate or harmonize activities among many superiors and subordinates? You still have to do that. Okay? We'll take a break here in a minute. Right under this concept here. So with this limitation, how does Schwerpunkt play into this concept? And of course, it's sort of the glue that holds everything together. I'm trying to tell you. And I've said it different ways. I'll let you read it. And they have a Schwerpunkt at all levels, from theater all the way down. Theater, Army Group, Army, Corps, Division, Regiment. Schwerpunkt inside, Schwerpunkt inside, Schwerpunkt inside, Schwerpunkt. Or focus of main effort, or point of main effort, main effort. Image around the movement. Supporting units are focused to exploit opportunities, maintain tempo operation. The initiative of many subordinates is harmonized within superior intent. So if they know what the Schwerpunkt is, in that sense, then implicitly, each guy is cooperating with all the other people. You see what I'm saying? Now there's a danger. I know some of the Marine documents you say you designate a unit as being the Schwerpunkt or focus of effort. You may do that, you may not. Let me show you where that might not play. I'm going to be very careful with that. And let's take, for example, when the Germans decided to go through the Ardennes. I'm talking about 1940, not 1945, or 1944 when they hit us in December. In 1940, when we went through the Ardennes. Initially, before that, they were going to have their main effort up north. You know, somewhat follow the Schlieffen plan. Then as a result of Manstein getting to Hitler, they shifted the Schwerpunkt down to the southern sector. Why did they do that, anybody?
Said there was no resistance there.
Okay, so the Schwerpunkt wasn't set because the unit was set because that sector would give them a weakness they could exploit. So the Schwerpunkt was set in that sector, and once it's set there, the units enter part of that Schwerpunkt. So don't just designate a unit. You want to look at the sector you're looking at, and you say, okay, this is the area I want to do it because they're weak here, and then those units become the Schwerpunkt to go through there. Because otherwise, you're only internally focused. You've got to be focused outward, not inward.
Say that again, sir.
Okay, let's say it again. 1940, so you get the whole idea, and they made a mistake later on. I'm going to show you the difference between the two. That's why I'm drawing this distinction right now. I'm talking about 1940. And if you people haven't read it, I'll explain to you. There was a big argument in the German army where the so-called main effort, in fact, most of them thought, until Manstein intervened, that they were going to have their main effort come out of the lowlands, Holland and Belgium, and sweep around, almost like the Schlieffen plan out of World War I, the same kind of an idea. And Manstein looked at that, and he's very gifted. That's bullshit. So then he got together with Guderian, wanted to know. He said, we know the French are kind of weak here. Can we get those goddamn panzers through the Ardennes? Guderian looked, of course we can. So then he drew up the whole plan for going through the Ardennes and make that the main effort. So the main effort, or the Schwerpunkt, was set not by the unit, but by what? By the area where the other guy wasn't going to be. And then, since it's set there, of course, those units become the Schwerpunkt, and all the support goes in there, the main support. And the northern effort then became a chain for the Chi coming out of the south there. Well, it wasn't really the south, it was through the center there, just on the northern side of the Maginot Line.
It may just be semantically that I'm confused, but I don't see that that's any different than what we've previously talked about. In my opinion, in my mind, the focus of effort, or main effort, or whatever you're going to call it this way, but the focus of effort is directed at critical enemy vulnerability. Once you decide,
Maybe not. Maybe not. We had that argument last night. Maybe you might, if it's a critical vulnerability, he may defend it, then it's going strength against strength. You don't want to do it. Remember, we've gone through this argument.
Okay, I'll buy that.
We've gone through this. So you've got to be very careful with that.
Using the concept of multiple thrusts.
What you want to do is get him, you have to expose his vulnerability. You want to go through the weaknesses so you can expose those and get to it.
Using the idea of multiple thrusts, you may not pick your point of main effort.
Say that again. I was going to do that next. Say it
Using
loud,
the
loud.
principle of multiple thrusts, you may not pick your point of main effort until you've actually made contact with the enemy and identified.
Oh, wait a minute. No, maybe no. You're on the right track. But who's going to be the main effort? You got 5 or 10 thrusts going. You're going to pick one and everybody say it.
Everybody can be your point of main effort.
That's right. It's a focus of effort. They're all part of the main
Your
effort.
point of main effort can be not having one.
But it's that area. And they're all part of the focus of the main effort. That's why I say you got to be careful designating one unit and all the other guys only got one little thrust. Because if you start at theater level and say, okay, your army group's the main effort, and then inside that army group, that army's the main effort. And then you go down and you say, okay, the corps, the division, in front of you got the squad's the main effort, and then you got one guy out there, it's the main effort for the whole goddamn thing from army group all the way down. That's bullshit.
Well, what you really saying?
You see what I'm saying? I took it to a logical extreme, obviously, to show you that it doesn't work that way.
The key to that seems to be is the adaptability underlying. In other words, don't be so rigid you can't change your main effort as the real that unfolds.
Well, no, but we're just saying it's a starting point. We haven't even talked about shifting. We want to shift it later on. We know it. We're just saying, okay, we've set the operation up. We're talking about the Ardennes. 1940. We haven't done the operation yet. We're just saying, okay, where are we going to allocate on the first day, regardless of whether we shift it the next day? All we're talking about is how are we going to allocate? What's going to be the base? This unit's the main effort because we like the guy or something? Fuck, he goes off? No. What you're going to do is you're going to look at the front there and say, look, they have a weakness here. We can exploit that weakness. Therefore, the main effort's going to be set because the weakness exists here, and then those units become part of that main effort because of the situation you're going against. It's set primarily by your enemy being weak, not by your own forces. In other words, it's an outward orientation, not an inward orientation, even though the Schwerpunkt itself is inward. Am I making my point?
If your definition or explanation of focus of effort is by sector and area, is there a difference between this and main attack?
Well, you already know it's weak all over. You may just say, okay, we'll just designate this unit. I just don't want you want a recipe. I'm trying to talk you out of a recipe. You may sometimes set it by unit, you may set it by sector. I'm just saying I use that as an example.
My question
But in every case, when you set that thing, the thing I'm trying to tell you, in a sense, it's going against the guy's weakness. So that sort of sets it, if you have a sort of a philosophy going strength against weakness. That's how you're going to set that main effort. Go ahead.
What's the difference between focus and effort and main attack?
Oh, same thing. The Germans use point of main effort. They talk about, we call it focus of main effort. Now the Marines like to call it, I think it's a better word, focus of effort or focus of efforts. We're all saying the same thing.
The thing
In
is,
fact,
but that main attack word is one we have to be careful. I mean, you
have
talk
to be
about
careful.
terms
It's
having
only
a lot
attack.
of baggage, see? And that's a
No,
term
the one
the
thing
Marine
bad
Corps
about main
was
attack,
using.
Mike's onto something. If it's a main attack,
Yeah, it does.
how do you
because-
handle it from a defensive viewpoint?
Exactly.
See, Schwerpunkt can also be defensive.
And also, that's the term the Marine Corps was using way before we even had this focus of effort concept. And
See,
so it
Schwerpunkt-
tends to be kind of shallow. I mean, if you're thinking of main attack the way it used to be in our old FMs, I'd say forget it.
I
Because
can
it's-
understand that, but the college, the teaching is quite different.
Focus
But
on,
it's different.
y'all, in the college, you're gonna get FMF1 tomorrow.
And it's focus of effort.
It's focus of effort. FMF1, if we'd have had it when the year started, we'd have saved an awful lot of agonizing discussions, which would solve. So focus of effort encompasses the cover board saying.
But you're going to hear people still want to use the word German Schwerpunkt. That's all right, fine. They're talking about focus of effort or main effort or focus of main effort. And I tend to like the word focus of efforts better because what I want to do with effort, guys say, well, we only want one thrust. I want the multiple thrust. So it's focus of effort, so you have multiple thrusts. So you can pull the guy apart. You'll see that in a few moments. But, you know, don't worry about it. What I'm trying to do is don't think of it as a recipe. That's what I'm trying to get you out of it. It's always going to be because it's only because we designate this unit. I'm trying to get you out of that. You may do it that way, but there's these other ways. The key thing is what you're really trying to do is unwind your adversary. You're assigning internally, but it's so you can exploit your strength against his weakness. It might be because of the terrain situation. It might be because of the way the way they've set their units. There'll be a number of reasons why you're going to do that. You see what I'm getting at? Okay. And that's all I'm trying to tell you. I don't want to take it anything. What I'm trying to do, you may hate my guts for it, is I don't want you to have a rigid recipe. Because if you start getting rigid recipes and the guy's going to find out what that is, you in a sense become predictable, and he's going to pull your pants down. You may not know in the beginning, but after you do it, it goes, hey, I can get the picture. So then he'll play it against you. He'll use it against you. Go ahead.
So I see a flaw in this then. The Germans, they say that they want to teach their officers to think the same way. They train them the same way, and more importantly, to think the same way. And there's an element of predictability.
There's a danger. You lay it out. You're going on to something. Go ahead.
What bothers me is, I'm trained the same way my boss is. I'm trained to think the same way my boss is. The reason he can just say, okay, my intent is, and I can take the ball and run with it, is because he knows that I'm going to come to the same damn conclusion on how to carry out my how.
Not necessarily.
Probably.
No. If you hear my organic design for command and control, when you train your people, if you train across a narrow repertoire, then you'll tend to do it the same way he does. But if you have a wide repertoire, there's different combinations you can use. And so when you try to build this common mindset, it's a cause of large variety of different situations. And so even though you have one how in mind, he may have a different how in mind, but you're still under the same framework.
Well, I'm limited by my assets and by what I've got
So
available
what?
to do the job with. Like
I don't care we have limited assets. There's still more than one way to skin a cat.
Not too many.
If you don't think, then it's just, what you've got a self-fulfilling prophecy.
What I'm thinking is
But
today
some
when
can
I
say
do,
time, though, sir.
Huh?
There's many ways to skin a cat, but sometimes
I understand
time.
that.
And
I understand.
speed is most important.
Yeah, but
That's
but
hard.
see, now you're looking for an optimum solution. We couldn't even get an optimum solution. I was laying out the equations for goddamn trying to optimize airplane designs. We couldn't do it. You're going to do it with human beings.
what I'm
That's
saying
even tougher.
there may be 100 different ways to do it, but there's maybe one or two or three.
There
really
might
good
be a
ways.
few in there that are better than the others. I agree, but that doesn't mean you're going to do it exactly like he's going to do it.
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't mean that at all. I mean, we're saying look for weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Now, I might find a totally different weakness than you see. I might be able to find one that you would never perceive, or you might be able to see one that I never would, because we think differently. We're two different people. But we're both going to be looking for those weaknesses. That's the one thing our common commander knows.
See, you might see it, because your orientation, because you said to see it one way, you may see a sort of what you call a physical weakness on the guy. You understand what I'm saying? So you're going to allocate, and you're going to set up your focus of effort or your Schwerpunkt, whatever you want to call it, against that. Whereas what Mike's saying, he may see something, well, the way these guys have behaved before in battle, they've got a lot of troops, they're weak units. And in that sense, it's a morale problem, so you're going to direct it against them because he knows they're going to crumble. So he might set it differently than you would. You see what I'm saying? Because they're different. You're orienting different.
It's a British Navy, but the Royal Navy is, they practice this in their own way. And if you take a look at Cape St. Vincent and Nelson's action, it was totally the last thing his commander, Jervis, ever would have thought of to do but yet it accomplished exactly what Jervis wanted to accomplish. I mean, Nelson pulls out of the fleet formation and bottles up the whole Spanish and French fleet, and they win. And, Jervis never agreed to that.
What did Nelson say about his people that were so understood? Well, he called them what? A band of what? Band of brothers. Same thing. Same idea. Band of brothers. You see what I'm getting at then? Don't try to make it too recipe. If you get it too recipe, then you start a little bit too predictable. That's why I'm trying to deliberately set in excursions here. But as long as you have the same feeling, you'll build up that thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay? So you see what the way I've laid that out? So it's a unifying concept or a unifying meaning. So it can work together. You understand? Go ahead.
I understand your thought process, and you talk about your medium through which subordinate initiative is implicitly connected to superior intent. Training can do all this, whatever. But when you have a specific mission at the tactical level, how do you do that? And I have a statement. You do that with a 5-paragraph order, and within there you put in order to, so everyone realizes what the intent is, and then you leave them to do it. So you talk. Or
you might not even have it. Why do you have to have a written order? Who says you have to have a written order? I didn't say you had to.
I did.
I don't need a written order. In fact, the Germans operate verbal orders only. Why do you have to have a written order?
Because every MapX we've done here, you get 10 different people going 10 different directions, and if you don't get in some guidance, it ain't going to get done.
That's a reflection on the way we think.
But I'm saying you don't have to have a written order.
I'm not saying you have to take the.
Not only that, in the U.S. Army, you ever hear of Tiger Jack Woods, 4th Armored Division? Considered one of the best under Patton. Was the best armored division. One division operating on a front 500 miles wide and cleaning the clocks of the Germans. You know how he gave his orders? He flew in his goddamn little Piper Cub, had the guy land and go and talk to the guy and say, okay, you know what to do? Fine. And he goes, I got to hurry. I got to get the other guy. So he's going all over the front, just talking to him. No written orders. The other guys are sitting back here, they're fucking succeeding, pushing forward.
Well, they can be
very Christ, you're 500 miles. You better get it. Keep going, Tiger. And they just unravel the whole German front. Patton couldn't believe it. In fact, he disobeyed Patton's order. Patton says, you got to loop here. That's not the way the war is. Fuck it, we're going that way. And Patton was going to fire him. He got to him, he says, look it, goddammit. The name of the game is to get Germany out of the war. And going back to the coast, we're looking at England. We're going to loop around. He's bullshit. We're going to go right and pull them apart. And Patton looked at him. He says, you're right. Go ahead. But he had the guts, he had the confidence to do what had to be done. He was our best armored commander during World War II. He'd go out to Fort Knox, I think he's a god, or wherever it is they got their armored center. They call him the professor, no matter what. Professor John Woods, because he was smart. He could think. And there's a book out called Tiger Jack. And you know what he was? He was fired. And he didn't serve in North Africa. His first combat assignment was after the Normandy operation. Got there late. He was the best commander. He didn't invade, he didn't land at Normandy. And then he got canned around Metz because he wanted to use maneuver warfare and they wanted him to slug it out. So he got fired. He lasted about 6 months and Christ was the best armored commander they ever had. Go ahead.
So he achieved what the Germans tried to do through their training, taking guys from
Wait a minute.
the age of pups and training them.
But he trained his people that way. They said, oh, he was a stickler.
In a matter of months or a year.
Well, he worked his people, worked them all the time.
He did it in how much time?
I don't know how much time he did it, but he did it.
So maybe we don't need all this training over years and years and years.
Don't say that. It's like a spear into my heart.
That was my intense, right?
Yeah, if you have all the training, which becomes like a choreographed ballet, it's no good. You got to take variety and do it. You change things on. You got to teach different people. And that's sometimes what we do is we get the training. It's just a drill after drill, the same old thing. Well, now everybody's rigid. They can't think. They're doing the same thing. And that's why I say you got to always keep introducing variety. And if you don't do it, you're going to have a narrow repertoire, and the other guy's got a wider repertoire. He's going to clean you out. It's like a wide-angle lens a wide band going against a narrow band. Communicating. You're talking about wide band communicating versus narrow band. A wide band can look at narrow band, but not the other way. At least all of the band. So you want to wide band that son of a bitch. So he's only got a piece of it, and you got all the pieces, or more of the pieces. You don't have all, never, but you'll have more pieces than he's got. And you can pull him down rather than pulling you apart.
We were talking about this last night. What we think we're saying is there's three levels you're looking at. One is a concept, a theory that you operate on. This is it, maneuver warfare with all entails. And then there's the repeated ability to execute it or apply it. So you develop your repertoire. You've done it so many times in map exercises, in CPXs, and when you can, full-blown field exercises, but when the time comes, you've got a repertoire that doesn't have 1 or 2 answers. It's not always.
That's right.
But the key is that we're struggling with is how do you get the tools in a 5-paragraph order or whatever it is and make those tools simple enough. We don't concentrate. How much time we spend on staff action? We focus on procedures, but what we should be doing is understanding the concepts and practicing it with the limited tools. But it's easy to say how we get there.
Well, I think we do that. What I'm just saying is if you have something that's written, it's going to preclude having to ask a lot of questions that are naturally going to arise when someone says go from point A to B.
I don't mind you having a simple order.
Well, that's
I'm not against
talking
that, but
about.
you don't just have to have a written order. I can go with verbal orders. And the Germans, why do you want verbal orders? I'm getting ahead of myself. You're pushing me. I'm going to answer your question. I'll get into that in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself because I want to talk to you. Okay? Okay, and here's, if you look at their philosophy, here's the key thing behind it. What they're really doing. You look at their whole operation based on a common outlook, freedom of action, they realize their concept. They emphasize implicit over explicit communication. In other words, since they have a common outlook, it's like in a family, you know. And you and I are good friends, I don't have to give you detail what to do, I just give you a word or two and you're on your way. In other words, that one word is dripping with information. So you don't have to say too much. As a matter of fact, the British noticed that after a German unit came in the front lines, if there was a new unit, they'd talk a lot. After they got in there and were plaguing the problem, they get very quiet. They only had to give a few words to do stuff. In other words, in fact, even Mellenthin sort of tips you off and he says, we finally worked in our signals so we could work together very well. He says it very often in his Panzer battles. They work together long enough. He said, we finally worked our signals so we don't have to say a lot. So it's implicit over explicit. Which suggests that the secret of the command and control system is not what's stated, but what's unstated, at least in an explicit sense. That's the secret. And by doing that, you can exploit lower level initiative, get realize high level intent, thereby diminish friction and reduce time, hence you gain both quickness and security because you're not talking a lot. We used to train fighter pilots that way out at Nellis. Initially, they're all jabbering all the time. So I'd take them up and work with them. And I said, I don't want you to say a goddamn thing, nothing if you can. They said, well, you can't do that. So I want as few words possible when you're working together. I want one word dripping with information because what happened, they're talking so long, the events are unfolding faster than they communicate, so the whole thing just welled away into disorder and chaos. So we got them working together, so they develop that finger spits and fuel, and they say, psh, they word or two, and boy, everybody's adjusted. Because everybody knew all the sequence that flowed behind that word. And now then, your communication is unfolding more rapidly than the events are unfolding. Now, you're in charge of events instead of the events being in charge of you. But if you need detailed orders, the events are spilling out faster than your orders. Christ, you're going to fall behind. All you're going to do is generate confusion, disorder, and the whole system is going to come unglued. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what happened with the evacuation of Saigon. You know, General Gray talked about that. Christ, they were pumping in changes orders, and they were doing it at a pace that wasn't fast enough. The events and the whole thing, they were just confusing everybody. Finally, everybody stopped looking at the goddamn machine and how they're going to evacuate. Old Gray likes to talk about that, General Gray. Some people were trying to fob that off as a smooth operation because they're doing it through a computer. He said, I was on the other end of that. That was a total disaster. Remember that time, Mike, when he criticized an Army general? Like some Army general was trying to fob that off. He said, I was there. Were you general? He says, no, let me explain it to you. So, by doing this, in my words, at least in the early part of the war, they were able to get inside their adversary's OODA, or stated by General Blumentritt. I'm quoting him here, his statement. Nobody's saying it. And those are his underlines, which is almost like my OODA. Nobody's saying it. Hinged upon, rapid, he underlined it. Concise assessment of the situation, that's orientation, already assumed the observation. Quick decision and quick execution. There it is, orientation, decision, and execution. You just left out the word observation. In other words, you already gotten that for intelligence elsewhere. Those are his words. And note what he says. Each minute ahead of the enemy is an advantage. In other words, you're pulling down his socks rather than him pulling yours down. I found that afterwards. Isn't that gorgeous? Let's take a break, give you a 5-minute break, we'll come back and go through the rest of the list. We don't want to take a lot of time. That's what we're doing. Let's press on the Blitzkrieg. All I'm showing you here now, let's look at all I'm showing you here is their penetration methods, their compression Blitzkrieg penetration. I'm showing you they're zigzagging their way in. Here's the thrust, sometimes call them thrust, they call this, these are also thrusts, when they go laterally, I like to call them off-roll and roll-out. And the basic idea, what you're doing here is you're working, that's what they want to zigzag, they're working strength against weakness, and then rolling out and cutting off the guy's lines of communication. So they can't defend. In other words, they're draining away their support, their rear support, and their lines of retreat. Not only that, they do it at all levels. You know, you have those thrust and rollouts at battalion, at regimental, division. So you got thrust inside, thrust at all levels there. So the other guys, what the hell is going on here? Now, you see the way they represent the map, these nice, neat arrows going through. Well, that doesn't really work out that way. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay? And so now I've lifted up to a higher level. So now we've got, let's say, a higher level thrust, but inside those you got these individual thrusts. You're working a pincer on a guy. And then out of these, more thrust coming in, generating in. Basically, what are you doing? You're generating what? What's the key word? I said it earlier. What are you doing when you're doing that? You're generating what? Anybody? Non-cooperative centers of gravity. What you're doing by doing it, you're slicing in here, coming in, so that it can't function as organic whole. You're generating those non-cooperative centers of gravity, and you're sweeping out the debris then.